Anthony Pierri spent 11 years as a pastor. Then he started posting on LinkedIn about B2B homepage positioning, a topic most founders find somewhere between boring and terrifying, and built a consultancy that has helped approximately 400 companies, reaches 11 million people a year, and gets 95% of its clients from inbound traffic. He'll tell you the homepage isn't even the point. What matters is whether the entire company can agree on the one or two sentences about who you are, who you serve, and why you're different. If they can't, and most companies can't, that misalignment is costing you deals every single day. The homepage just makes it visible. Today, we're finding out how to fix that. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Anthony Pierri, co-founder of Fletch PMM. This is Return on Reputation. I'm Justin Obie. Let's get into it. All right, Anthony, welcome to Return on Reputation. I really appreciate you coming here. This is something I'm very looking forward to because I just said it. You are living proof of this thesis that founder-led marketing works, and your backstory is very interesting to me. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to dive in.
Okay, so if I got this right, you were a pastor first, and then product marketer, and then LinkedIn thought leader, guitarist, and now you've served over, I think, 400 clients, if I got that right.
Yeah, there was a brief period between pastor and product marketer too, where I was in a sales role too. That was my first leaving behind the church world.
Yeah.
I took an entry-level sales job, and that was in between the two. But yeah, the general broad strokes are correct.
Yeah. Okay. So how has it come together to where you are now? Like, how has your journey helped you get to Fletch PMM? And I'm sure there's a through line there somewhere, but just give us, for everyone listening, give us the backstory. Who is Anthony Pierri?
Yeah, for sure. So to try and not go too long of a rabbit hole on, right? But yeah, I mean, I grew up going to church. I worked in churches since I was in high school. There was a little church in town that would pay me to play guitar in the Sunday morning band. And I was like, this is amazing. And then I thought I wanted to be an English teacher for high school, went to school for that, was getting close to the end. And then the church that I was going to said, hey, if you can finish your degree, we'll take you in a full-time role. And I was about to get married. I'm like, oh, I really need a job. So I changed my mind. I'm like, I'm not going to do the teaching thing anymore. And I finished with an English major. And then I went to go work with church. And they said, actually, we found someone else for the role that we were going to hire you for. And I didn't find out until after I had dropped out of the teaching program. So I was like, well, this is great. So then I started applying, and I'm like, well, I only have church experience. So I started applying. I found this job downtown at this really big mega church in Chicago.
Okay.
Went and worked there for a period of years. And you just keep, over time, if you stay in a job, you get promoted. And then eventually the next promotion was like a pastoral one. So it was called an associate pastor, which wasn't the main head one. But I got to speak in front of a room of maybe around 150, 200 people every week, and got to lead teams and build systems and structure to help it run. It was all volunteer run. So we had a band that was all volunteer. We had tech people that was all volunteer, people setting up chairs and things like that. So we had this big team of people and did that for a long time. And then my wife had been commuting in and out of the city, and we were like, okay, we should move closer to her job. She works for her family's company. So she was going to be there for a long time. So I was like, I could get another job at a different church. I was going to go work at a different church back actually in my hometown. And then the pandemic happened. Everything got kind of thrown all over the place. I was working there for a little, but the job that I took ended up not being what it was going to be because the pandemic shifted everything. And then I was like, I just been in this industry for so long. I was like, I need to take a break. So a previous boss of mine connected me with this agency out of Wisconsin that did product design, product development, product management for B2B software companies primarily. And I knew nothing about the industry, got into there, took this entry-level sales job, and then we were trying to figure out, could we make something like outbound sales work for an agency like them? And I've always been in these roles where it's very ambiguous, and it's, you could do this, you could do that, we don't really know, we'll figure it out together. So they brought me in and they were like, we don't know that this is going to work. So I spent 9 months trying to make outbound sales work for the agency and could not do anything, couldn't even get any semblance of a deal closed or anything. And I really blamed myself for a while until I really understood the reason it was not working was because we were selling custom scoped projects for all sorts of different people. And this ended up being like a bedrock of the product marketing consultancy that I run now, is that
Yes.
if you are doing custom work, you can't really market it, because marketing is in essence a one-to-many thing. And if everyone is different, you can't really do one-to-many. So up until that point, the agency founder had been getting all of his business through one-on-one networking and referrals from previous clients. And there wasn't a way to do it unless you were to niche down, pick some sort of repeatable productized service.
Yes. Yep.
And so that's where I met my co-founder now. Co-founder is named Rob. And the two of us were tasked with figuring out, is there a repeatable service that the agency could sell? And what would that be? And so we're trying to figure it out. We're trying lots of different things. And I randomly, on a whim, posted on LinkedIn thinking, maybe this could be a good way to get an audience of people to figure out what the thing could be. And the first post I did on LinkedIn went viral, which is crazy because I was
First one.
Wow. And I was like, this is wild. And then I posted again, and the second one went viral. And I was like, what? What's going on? And then,
Did you go 3 for 3?
I did not have 3 for 3. Then it was probably 10 or 20 before anything else happened. But the first two, it opened my eyes. I was like, oh my gosh, there's something here. And looking in reverse, what I didn't realize at the time is that the bar for content on LinkedIn 3.5 years ago, 40 years ago, maybe 40, was so unbelievably low that anything remotely interesting would really get pushed in the algorithm. And it was like early days of Instagram.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Early days of Instagram, early days of any of these platforms where there's not that much competition yet. And so if you went back and looked at those posts, now they are so terrible in comparison, because I think more people have jumped on the platform and it's gotten more saturated over time.
For sure. Yeah.
But it was back then, it was really a huge leveraged thing that wasn't being taken advantage of. So we start posting, and we're trying to use this as a proxy to figure out what people are interested in, something we could sell. And we kind of stumbled our way into this positioning realm, which, like, when we first learned about it, I was like, I don't know what product positioning is. I read the April Dunford book, which is the main one everyone who likes product positioning in B2B reads, called Obviously Awesome.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I start following people in the space and doing lots of different things. And then we stumble into the homepage side of it, which was because we were like, okay, well, we want to publicly test some of these theories. How can we even gauge what a company's positioning is? Maybe we could look at their websites. So we would look at websites and try to reverse engineer what the positioning strategy was. And then we would post about it and would say, I went on this website, and the one thing we started realizing was that all these websites were unbelievably unclear, and you couldn't answer any of the positioning questions. I can't even tell what the heck the thing is. So we get going, and then people start seeing our posts, and they're like, all right, well, can you help me fix it? Can you help me fix the positioning?
Cool. Very cool.
Rewrite the homepage. So then we were like, okay, that's probably something. We start drilling down on it. And then eventually we came to this version of what we're doing now, which is a short, condensed, we call it a sprint, effectively helping people figure out the positioning strategy and then rewrite the homepage to match a way to display the positioning strategy to the world.
Yep.
We were doing that. We were making a decent amount of money coming in, but we realized with the agency owners, we were still part of the agency at this point, it didn't quite fit, because again, they didn't do anything marketing as part of their services. It was all product management, product design.
This is all before Fletch.
All before Fletch. Yeah.
Got it.
So we basically said, we don't know that this makes sense for us to stay all under the same entity. Thankfully, they're really nice guys. We were able to negotiate an amicable parting. We spun off, become Fletch PMM, which is the entity that we are today. Fast forward now, we have this business that we've been running, and we're working with lots of people. And it's still essentially a version of what we were doing right at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's a lot more streamlined and efficient now, and we're a lot better at it than we were when we didn't know what we were doing, but essentially doing the same thing.
Okay, cool. So you are essentially using the homepage as the forcing mechanism to get clear on positioning.
Correct. Yeah. And it's because something happens where if you get everyone in a room and you say, here's what we think the positioning strategy could be, what do you guys think? You can get people to agree and say, okay, I like that. And they might, in the back of their minds, be thinking, after this is done, I'm just gonna go and do my own thing anyways. I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing in my sales calls. But if you get everyone to agree, and then you get it live on the one single homepage that the company has, right? Because most companies don't have multiple homepages. Of course. Let's look at Anthropic, right? They're the big, fastest growing company in history, right?
Yep.
They still have one homepage.
Yeah,
so
of course.
What's going to go on the headline and the body, 2 or 3 sentences or whatever, is like the smallest description of a business. And if you make a big positioning shift from one category to another, now everyone on the sales call is going to have to defend that shift. So we see it less as like, it's important to get the homepage right because it's going to drive more conversions and stuff like that. Ideally, that'll happen. But a lot of the B2B software companies that we work with are selling expensive software that maybe takes a year to buy. So what role is the homepage really playing in that 6 to 12 month sales cycle? But for us, we see it as if you can get everything decided and everyone is okay with it in the public presentation on the homepage, you're just going to be so much more likely to stay aligned than if you didn't.
Oh, it's such important work. When you said it prior to the show, we were talking and you said it that way. I was like, holy shit, this is totally different. Because at first it was like, this is homepage design. And I was like, maybe you guys help design it. Maybe you actually get in the code. I don't know. And maybe you don't do any of that.
Yeah.
It sounds like, but even if what is the ROI on clarifying this on the homepage for a sales cycle that's 12 months, there's a ton, but it's harder to measure because now if you're aligned, right, the brand side of things, you have internal alignment, sales team is speaking the right language, people are rowing in the right direction, and hopefully all those things come together. And I think it's really smart that you're using the homepage as that forcing function.
Yeah. And like, to give an example, right, like a company that we worked with was making software for trucking businesses.
Okay.
And they were first creating like a broad analytics platform. That's how they had been positioning. It's analytics for trucking. And they were not doing very well. People were like, I don't really need this. I already have Power BI or whatever it was. Or the analyst was like, oh, why am I going to spend this? And then through the process of our sprint, we laid out other potential ways that they could theoretically position this platform. Okay. One of them being was, okay, well, what is one of the core analytics projects that people need you for? And there's something called a driver bonus program, which is basically how these businesses keep track of like how far they've driven, and they award like financial bonuses to different drivers for like behavior things and doing well and more drop-offs and deliveries and things. And they're like, people will use these analytics platforms to keep track of that. And they're like, that is really where we provide a lot of value rather than just the broad analytics. So we had presented that as an option. We were like, you could just focus on that. No longer are you analytics software. You're now driver bonus management software, something like that.
Yeah.
And so over time, through a lot of battling, they were like, okay, we're going to try it. And I caught up with the founder like maybe a year or two after we did the project. And he was like, if we had stayed analytics, the company would be dead. And now the company is thriving because we pointed in a different direction. And we realized too, once we went after driver bonus, there was going to be all this additional stuff we had to build that wasn't even on our roadmap. We needed to make a really good mobile app for all these drivers to be able to use. Like now we've got tens of thousands of drivers using our mobile app, and like everything's going up and to the right and all that stuff. And it's like, again, that's why when people would be like, okay, so if I work with you, like what's my conversion rate bump on the home page going to be? I'm like, that's not really what we're doing here. You're talking about like long-term company bets. Do you want to run in this direction or that direction? It's going to be a harder thing to measure, but ideally it's going to be a way bigger, more important thing than just that.
It's the foundational work that every company has to have locked in, ready to go. But it also sounds like you are a proponent of less is more, right? Focusing more on one service piece or one avatar, one everything. Is that right?
In some ways, but I think that this can get confused, especially I feel like people in the early days of their positioning journey of learning about these things, especially myself, it's like you can think about it and be like, okay, we need to define a specific demographic or firmographic picture of a person, and that's who we're going to go after. Like, it has to be like X4 marketing teams in big businesses in Europe. That's not really true in a lot of cases, right? There are ways that you can carve out a target market that aren't necessarily big lists of firmographics, and big lists of firmographics don't always work. Like I would always feel weird about it even in the early days because I felt that's what all the experts would say is you need
that's what they all say.
Yes. Tightly defined ICP, and ICP meant like these 25 specific criteria.
Very niche.
Yeah. But then you look at companies out in the world and you're like, that doesn't seem like they're doing that though, and they're crushing it. So an early company that we would look at when thinking about this was a company like Calendly. It's very simple. I think we maybe even booked this call with Calendly, or we booked lots of calls with Calendly.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
It's possible, right? So who's the target market for Calendly when they go to market? For us, it's not a firmographic segment. It's more of like a job to be done based segment. It's people that are trying to book meetings over email. And so does it make sense for Calendly to go to market and say, we help people book meetings over email, but we only help doctors in New York? What? Like, it doesn't make any sense. The job to be done sets the bounds of where the market is. And that's where like that narrowness comes in. The job has to be something that people understand. And it could be a big, huge initiative. There's a company we talk about called
a real problem.
Yeah. Well, there's a company we talk about called Vanta. I don't know if they're a decacorn now, but for sure a unicorn, a Silicon Valley darling. They go to market. It's not like I need to book this one meeting over the email. They're like, we're going to help your whole company become SOC 2 compliant, which is like a core compliance framework if you want to sell to the enterprise. And they basically saw this giant workflow that was being done and said, there's no tool to help you beginning to end with this really intense job to be done. Let's make software for it and go to market at that level. And they just were crushing it. There's another one more I've seen on the up and up right now. I think they're maybe worth $2 billion or more, called WorkOS.
Okay.
They're targeting people, and their ICP is companies that are trying to become enterprise ready. And there's a specific set of things that ladder up to that. But if you're a startup and you're trying to be enterprise ready, you have a certain set of criteria you're trying to create into the product. You need to have authentication. You need to have SSO. You need to have user
problems understood. It's baked in.
Yeah. So when they go to market, and you see this in their homepage, you see this in their ads, you see this on their LinkedIn, we're helping startups become enterprise ready. It's all over. And anyone who's in that bucket sees themselves in that job, regardless if they are a fintech startup in, LATAM, or they don't have to carve out. Like, you may want to layer those things in later, but you can position at a higher level. Like the example before, the driver bonus program for trucking companies. That's a job to be done based market. That's very clear.
Totally. Yeah. So when you started posting on LinkedIn, you were essentially doing public teardowns. Just, you didn't get their permission. You just grabbed a website. You said, hey, let's go through this. And was it public? You just shared what you found?
Yes.
Hey, just learning in public, giving more, just, this is what we're doing. And then were those companies that you did the teardown on, were they the first to come at you and say, hey, can you fix this?
No, usually they were not. Some of them were mad. A lot of them were mad, which was fun. Yeah. Because we try to be helpful, but we would also be calling out very specific things. And these are, again, it's one thing to call out and be like, hey, the book a demo button is broken on your website. You should fix it. It's like, okay. It's another thing to be like, hey, it seems like your leadership hasn't decided which of these markets they think is more important. And this split between them is probably causing a lot of friction in your business, right? I bet your salespeople are pulling in this. Like, people don't like that. They're like, leave me alone.
Well, there's a lot of ego attached to that too, because it probably took a long time for them to arrive there.
Totally.
And they might not even recognize there's a problem.
Totally. And they can also rationalize a lot of this stuff. Like, for example, so many websites have essentially died from people saying, well, we're making it more enterprise language, because the enterprise buyer cares about outcomes. They don't really care about specific product features and functionality. They want to know, is this really going to affect my bottom line? And then they just go to market and it's increase your revenue. And then everyone's, what is this? And they're like, oh, I'm speaking to the enterprise, like, you little piddly, point solution people, you don't get my world. And we're like, I don't think your customers get it either, which is a problem. But we were doing public teardowns, and most of the time people on the sidelines would see it and say, I saw your post about X company. I think we have the same problem. Could we chat?
How much of it that you discover is people trying to be clever over clear?
It sometimes is.
Is it some of that?
Where
is it coming from? The mismatch in clarity and how they are speaking on their website. What are like the key things that you see?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, the clear versus clever thing, I feel, comes usually on the heels of a brand exercise. So you work with an external brand agency and they come up with all these cool slogans that make sense in the context of the brand campaign. But divorced from all that, they don't really make any sense, and they just kind of look like vague statements. But the deeper thing is that people fundamentally do not understand what constitutes a market segment, that they think about it in terms of lists of companies, because that's how all the tools work, right? So if you're gonna say, I want to go, right, you're like, I need a list of 1,000 companies that I'm gonna go sell to. So they go into the website and the database, and it says, okay, well, what criteria do you want me to filter these companies by? And you can filter by size and location and number of employees. The one thing you can't filter for is, are the people doing stuff that would be better done with our product, right? So you could use proxies.
You
could
should
say,
be able to. Yeah.
You should be able to. It doesn't exist.
That'd be
though.
great.
So let's say you sell some sort of marketing software that helps you run live in-person events.
Yep.
So I can't filter for companies that are currently running live in-person events. I can only filter for companies based on marketing teams of a certain size and headcount and stuff. Yep. So when I do outreach to those people, I say, hey, we have this new software that'll help you run events. And the vast majority of them don't respond because they think I'm not running events. This is not relevant to me.
Yeah.
So I think there's that issue where there's just people are thinking about segments just from the Firmographic perspective and not from a jobs to be done perspective or category perspective. And that can cause these problems. But the other thing too is that you have a product team that is usually, in our case, it's mostly software company. Software is very flexible. So if I'm saying before, a market is people who have a specific job to be done and they're doing this thing, that constitutes a market. Then each time your product can serve a new job to be done, it's a new market. So you see on a website, you can go up to that little tab that says use cases or solutions, and the dropdown comes down, and there's 20 different things. That's 20 different markets. Every single one of those is going to have a different group of people with a different problem, different competitive alternative. You will have to make a different pitch on the value, different differentiation, different supporting points, different case studies, different like logos of companies that would matter to those people. So all these things, people don't realize that. And because so many people are engineering focused, product focused, they just keep seeing it in terms of opportunities of what could the product do. So they say, we could solve for this use case and solve for this use case. And nobody on the team is thinking about marketing. And what ends up happening is you get this Frankenstein product that is serving 25 different markets that has no unifying concept. And then the bigger the company, there are dedicated teams with their own P&Ls for each market. And then they say, okay, well, what are we going to put on the homepage? And they said, well, Jeff's department makes this much revenue. Sarah's makes this much, but we can't just...
They're all fighting.
Yeah, we can't just put Sarah's message up there because that affects my P&L. So what do they do is they find some sort of very vague thing that
covers everything.
Yeah, but is not specific enough to matter. And I always look at to try to get them over the hump. I'm like, when's the last time you went on Apple's website? And I'll ask you this. When was the last time you went on Apple's website?
Like probably a year ago.
Great.
Yeah.
If they were B2B SaaS that had the same constraints of the B2B software people, you would imagine that the homepage of Apple would be like creativity reimagined, helping people do their best work in all environments and all places.
Yeah.
You'd be like, well, how am I gonna speak across the vast product line of Apple for all the use cases, business, consumer? You go on their actual website. I don't know what it is right now. I
like trying to look it up.
Oh, right now it's really funny. It's the Apple TV Formula One documentary that just came out.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, it's whatever their latest thing is.
It's whatever they're prioritizing at the moment, right? So like a week ago, it was the iPhone. And you'd be like, interesting. So if the world's biggest company by market cap is able to prioritize their most important stuff, why can't you startup that's making $5 million a year?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's interesting. So okay. When you're working with these companies, are you saying, hey, you should create a website, a homepage that is constantly changing with one core message and then everything below the fold is variable like Apple? Or what's the magic sauce of the homepage?
Yeah. I mean, what I think it is, it's like when I think about the homepage and when we work with these companies, what we're really asking is, where do you think the growth is going to come from over the next 12 to 18 months? What segment is going to be your most important segment to get you to hit the whatever revenue milestones that you're trying to get to? That's the segment you should probably talk to first. Below the fold, maybe a couple scrolls down, you can kind of fan out, but we think of it like almost like the real estate on the homepage that you dedicate to these different segments should mimic how much you're going to spend in your go-to-market. So it's if 60% of the homepage is around this one segment, probably 60% of your spend should be around that one segment too. You should have your resourcing of the marketing and salespeople going 60% on these people, And we're not always, it's always not all or nothing, right? You should focus on these people, kill all these other programs. Sometimes that's what you should do, but not always. It's more just if you think the sales and the business are going to come from this area, you would be better off leaning in to where the biggest opportunity is rather than trying to spread in all these different directions. Now, there's a qualifier. If you have the resourcing to do many different marketing strategies for many different people, it's less important. So I don't know what it is right now, but for a while, Microsoft's homepage was like a grid of all their different product lines. And it was like the Xbox and Azure and PCs, like computers. They weren't trying to find some sort of global way to position Xbox and the cloud service because it's just different audiences with different people.
Yeah.
They were basically like, we have a bunch of products. We're not prioritizing one of them. They're all really important. Self-serve your way. And then by the time you made it to the homepage of one of the products, that's where we got more of the positioning story of what is this product?
Right.
What is it for?
For that product specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. And Microsoft can do that because they're so big. But what we often find is if you go to these startups, if you're doing sub 5 million, you may only have 1 or 2 marketers. And so for me, prematurely splitting the company before your team can execute in these different areas and before the market has accepted that you do multiple things. Because that's actually the part that's probably even harder. Yeah, it's really hard. It's maybe a little bit easier in some cases to do marketing for multiple segments. Like you can do stuff faster, maybe with AI. But the harder thing is for the market to change their perception of you. There are some companies that we knew. There's a company called Hockey Stack. They have been going to market for a while saying we do B2B attribution. So we help you know, where did this deal come from, right? Was it from a webinar you did?
Yep.
And they had this specific way that they did it. They were going to market with that for several years, got a lot of notoriety from it. And now they've wholesale pivoted and they're doing AI agents. They call them AI revenue agents. If you still ask anyone who's not like intimately involved with Hockey Stack, they will say they do attribution. And if you ask the LLMs, they'll say they do attribution. And you ask Google, it'll say attribution. And you go to conferences and even in deals with people, they'll be like, oh, we're a competitor. We do attribution. We do it better than they do. And they're not even talking about it anymore. But it just takes so long for these messages to percolate out. So companies, before they've really even established any semblance of a standing in the market, will prematurely split the business 5 ways and be like, oh yeah, well, we do this and this. And then you ask anyone, like, what do they do? And they're like, I don't even know who that company is. Or like, maybe I've heard the name. I have no idea what they do. So they get out, they look at what the big companies do and say, we could just do the same thing as them without the resourcing to pull it off and without the brand credibility to be known for both an Xbox and cloud services.
They're way ahead of themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. So so talking about, I'm going to bring it back to you. I mean, how much of your business is coming inbound because of what you're doing on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Your personal brand.
At this point, it's almost, I would say probably 95% potentially is all inbound. I mean, it's all inbound.
Do you attribute that to your personal brand in LinkedIn?
I think that's probably the biggest driver.
Okay.
At this point, right, it's like everything comes inbound. We don't do any outbound. We're not doing any prospecting or anything like that. But I would say the bulk of it are people who get on sales calls with us and say, I heard about you or I've been following you on LinkedIn. I read your stuff. Then a smaller portion of the people will say, I was recommended to you by the LLM or Claude or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But if you trace why Claude is recommending it, it's from the LinkedIn content, right?
Yeah.
It's
LinkedIn's the number 2 or 3 source right now for LLMs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So even indirectly, the people who are not coming from LinkedIn are still coming from LinkedIn. And then we will get speaking engagements at VC and like conferences and stuff. And they're inviting us on because of our audience and establishment and authority from LinkedIn. So even these other, you could say they're different attribution, they all kind of trace back to the audience building that we've spent the last 3 years doing.
Because you've focused so on one core problem, one niche of this is what exactly we do. Like it sounds like you've also taken your own advice and said, this is the one thing we do, rather than splitting up tons of different resources. You've problem solved for that one thing.
Yeah, 100%. And that was very much
while building authority in public.
Yeah. And it helps give us credibility, right? Because for example, when we meet with a company and we give some sort of spiel about to make the positioning work, you kind of are going to have to prioritize one of these markets over the others. Yeah. And the other ones are going to have to take a back seat. That's what it's going to allow you to have a really powerful message. And when they can then look at our website and be like, wow, look at how focused it is. It helps. If they land on our website, we had some vague brand language of unleash your company, they'd be like, well, wait a minute, like this, I can't even tell what they do from it. But we've tried to make those two things be completely congruent, the message we tell and what we actually do.
Yeah. And the way you've done it, I just want to just highlight this because I think a lot of people have this question. If you are sharing everything you know on LinkedIn, for example, or on this podcast, right? You're sharing a lot of information. Is there ever a fear that you're leaving money on the table? Because like, why will someone hire you? Because if you've already shared it.
Yeah.
I
don't worry about that. There was a guy named Drew McClellan, and he had a podcast. I think it was called like Building a Better Agency or something pretty early on. I just randomly heard this episode.
Okay.
And he said, it's such a painfully obvious statement, but so many people don't follow it. He said, if you want to sell an expertise-based business or expertise-based service, you have to publicly demonstrate your expertise, which I was like, so obvious, right?
Yeah, but there's a fear.
But his whole take, and the one we've adopted, is that it's almost like open source software, right? So the open source software model is I create software, I give it out for free, and then some companies will get the software and say, this is going to be kind of complicated to do. I'm going to hire the business to help me implement it.
Got it.
And so the open source aspect of it creates a bunch of word of mouth because all these people start using it. And the people who are really gung-ho will use it and get ideally great results, which builds credibility. And then there will be people who will say, yeah, I don't have time to do that though. I don't want to become a positioning expert. Like, I don't have that desire. So I'll hire these guys to help do it. They clearly know what they're doing. I see them posting about it every day. They're sharing all these real examples and all these people are using their frameworks. Clearly they know. So for me, I don't think you lose business or leave money on the table because I think anyone who would do it themselves probably wouldn't have hired us anyways. Right. They're like, again,
that's a great way to look at it. Yeah,
exactly.
Well, I asked the question because it's like, there's a follow-up question because recently someone said it on Instagram or whatever, LinkedIn, that because of AI, we're going to go back to more gated content. We're going to start gatekeeping more and more because what's stopping me from downloading every single post from someone and dropping it in an LLM and say, hey, now create an agent for me that helps me out with this. I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
I think, it's a good idea on paper.
Yeah.
But I don't think it works in actuality. And I think it's going to fall short. And it probably is in that bucket of people who wouldn't hire you in the first place.
We've tried to use it. We have tried to create the positioning software, even just to keep it gated for us, to be like, we could move so much faster if we could. And I can't even get the LLM to remember what I told it 3 prompts prior. And I think these big companies now are ratcheting down a lot and there's like the evidence that Anthropic is actually holding back their better models for their employees and for their bigger contracts.
Yeah.
And the stuff that you and I get is, even if we're paying the top tier price, we're not actually getting access to it. They're shrinking the context windows because it's too expensive, right? This stuff there's going to be a tipping point where I saw an article that was like, there's all these new studies coming out that it's actually becoming more expensive to do it with AI than to just hire the human to do it because the token price is going through the roof. So I don't see a world where you can totally offload this type of stuff, nor would you want to, knowing that these things will lie to your face and make you feel good. Like I'm giving it the framework and I'm working with it every day. So we're not like anti-AI. We use it all throughout our business. I give it the framework. I tell the things, and then it will say, someone probably programmed in, stop just saying yes to everything. Start pushing back. Every time it pushes back, it's the dumbest pushback you could imagine. And I'm like, it's correcting me on the framework that I invented, that I just told it. No, and typically and I'm like, no, typically you're not. I'm the one who told you about that. You can't tell me how it's done.
I mean, I use it all the time, but every day I will you have to push back on what it comes back. And I love when it's like, I think there's a better way to do that. Or I think this is wrong. And you're like, it's absolutely, I can't believe that was terrible advice. I'm so sorry. And it completely backtracks and you're like, meh. I think there's good uses and bad, but I agree on this stuff. There's been so many times where because I feel like a lot of people have these 2 jobs. Everyone's in there talking about the same thing. Like they have your job and everyone feels like the second job is to learn AI because they don't want to fall behind. And so there have been times where I'm using it and I'm like, I could have gotten this done hours ago.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm tinkering with the AI to see if I can get the same output. My own brain could have done it. Right.
Yep.
My internal AI could have done it better.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
and then I think we're kind of jumping all over around, but so everything's coming into you, which I would say all businesses would kill for that, like 99% inbound, no prospecting, no sale. I mean, that's fantastic. When you're working with clients, who are they speaking to directly to get very into the weeds? Because I think you have a champion frame around that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So it's
So-
obviously different. It's mostly B2B scenarios
Yeah.
that we're operating in. So if you're a product-led growth, you have no sales team, like our process is maybe less helpful for these like viral products that kind of just spread themselves. But we do usually say it's helpful to think about if you are selling to a buying committee, the first person that you want to focus on is probably what we would call the champion. And there's some research done by a firm called Winter, Winter.
Yep.
They've done some research that found that the champion for these, if you're selling to companies that are doing 50 million or more in revenue, the champion is likely a manager or a director, which I used to think it was director or VP, but it's not. It's usually a manager or director. And it has to be someone who has enough clout with the higher ups that they could pull in executive sponsors, but they also need to be not so high up and so far removed that they don't even understand what's happening at the ground floor level. Right?
So it's not the founder, the CEO, the CMO, whatever.
Unless you're selling to a small business, right? If you're selling to a company,
yes,
like let's say you're selling a product to my company, we have 4 full-time employees and maybe 4 or 5 contractors. You're going to go to the C-suite. Am I really a CEO? Not really, but I'm the owner of the business. So it's all relative to the size, right? So,
got it.
But yeah, if you're
but you said it, if 50 million or over, it's manager or director.
It's usually a manager or director, yeah. And there are occasions where that's not the case. What happens actually is that if you're going to go higher than that, let's say you're going to go to a true C-suite of a big business, it's just going to dictate a very different go-to-market model than you would do the other way. You're not going to be able to do mass marketing to this elite group of CEOs that have walled themselves off from any of this stuff. If you want to sell to Salesforce, you're not going to go to Mark Benioff and be like, hey, I got this new tool. Like they're hard to get to. So when you see companies that sell to the C-suite, these giant 7, 8, 9-figure deals, like the Palantirs of the world, if they're going to go after that level, it actually becomes more like referrals and friends and your personal network, almost like it would be with the custom agency that I used to work for, where like when you look at how a company like Palantir, and they're a very successful company, sells these giant deals to world leaders and politicians and Fortune 500 CEOs, it's not from running ads on Instagram. It's not, the CEO of this Fortune 50 company saw your TikTok and was booked a call. No, these are closed door, truly on the golf course type deals where it's rubbing shoulders at these big events. And so if you as a company don't have access to the executives in any way, you're probably not going to be able to sell to them and then go truly top down. You're probably going to have to go middle up somewhere in this champion space because, again, you can get to them. There's tens of thousands of directors and managers at Salesforce. So if I want to get Salesforce as a client for my business, I've got tens of thousands of options, right?
And so that's what the messaging on the homepage is really targeting.
A lot of times, yeah, it would be saying who's going to be most likely to even see this thing.
Yeah.
You feel like our in is, and again, certain companies can skew higher or lower, but they're going to have big implications on your go-to-market that you can actually not do it certain ways if you're going to go too high.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to transition a little bit because we talk on the show, it's called Return on Reputation. Right? There's a lot of how do I build my company while, how do you do it, right? Like you're busy, you're building a company, but you're also making time for these things, right? Jumping on a show, building your authority capital. That's what I'm calling it. And I think there's for a lot of executives, founders, they have this authority gap, right? Because they could be an expert in their field and they're just not known outside of their inner circle of people who know them to be an incredible executive or expert. And so I think that costs millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So I guess to bring it back to make it actionable for people listening, if the founder has real credibility and they're known in their market, their podcast is growing, people trust them, but the homepage is generic, right? It's doing what you said earlier. It's trying to speak to too many different segments of the market at one time. And the positioning is unclear. What is the first, like, where do you start?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I've used this qualifier before. Like, where does positioning stuff really matter?
Yeah.
To me, it matters in low trust environments. So if I'm encountering a brand that I've never heard of, positioning is really going to be important because they're going to have to frame it in terms of value to me as someone who doesn't already know that they're the number one choice. What you described, a founder who's very well known, very trusted, has all these people, that founder actually, it might not matter the positioning, right? Because they might be able to launch whatever and their trusted audience.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about, Anthony, is they're trusted in their small circle. So, but not publicly, they're invisible.
Okay. Then yeah, then I would apply.
So to me, that's where the authority gap exists.
I see what you're saying.
Right? Because they are a true expert in their field. So like on the XY axis, right?
Yep.
They're very high up on expertise, which is the Y axis. And then X would be like, are they well known? Right? Are they very loud? You can be way low, like way high on X. Like you just post every day. Everyone knows about you. There's no clear positioning.
Yeah.
You're just loud, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people using AI are like that, right? Because the AI hasn't captured your voice. It's just talking like AI. They prompt and post.
Yep.
And it's, they let it fly and they're like, sweet. Volume is the game.
Yeah.
And just creates tons of noise. And so there's good ways and bad ways to do it.
And it's funny how you frame it. You could argue it creates tons of noise, or you could say it creates no noise because no one sees any of the posts because they're not good. You know what I mean? Like someone who posts every day and gets 10 impressions on each post. Do you really actually create noise, or is nobody seeing it, right? So to me, volume as a way of going viral or whatever, like just trying to automate these things, it's not going to work. That's a whole side tangent. We could talk about that later. But so I think if we're talking about a founder moving out of their little sphere of trust into what we would say more low trust environment, then I think these positioning things become really important. In the basis of the authority that you're talking about in a lot of cases is some sort of specialization, right? It's being known, oh, this is the company that does X really well. It helps people in Y scenario really well. And the problem is people don't necessarily want to hitch their wagon onto any X or Y. They say, well, can't it be X, Y, Z?
I want to help everybody.
Exactly. And like the thing that I've said before is like every specialist is also a generalist. They're just a generalist that decided to market one of their specialties. You can go and look at people who are killing it in one area. I guarantee you they are like really good and killing it in a lot of other areas too. It's just not public, right? There was, I can't remember, I heard this in some podcast. It was like some CEO or founder who was like number one, was also like the number one in Wii tennis. They were like globally ranked in Wii tennis, right? And it was like, but nobody knew that. But it's just like the person who's a specialist and really, really is good at something
incredible
will likely be good at a lot of other things. But it's better to be known for that one thing than to not really be known for 10 things. And people do not have the space in their brain to remember, oh, this person is good at these 15 things.
100%.
They want to put you in a box. We all do, right? We're lazy. We're like, I want to categorize every single person I know and every company I know. Oh, Salesforce, they're the CRM. Stripe, they're the payments processing company, right? Figma, that's the design tool. You can see these buckets with all these big businesses, and every one of the founders of those businesses would cringe so hard inside to be like, no, we're not just payments processing. Stripe has 5 products. We do $1 million. But I ask that question to every company when I'm trying to convince them of this. And I say, what's Stripe? And they go, payments processing. I'm like, why didn't you say getting your startup incorporated in Delaware? They also do that, right? Why didn't you say counting their carbon footprint? They also do that. Again, it's a benefit that everyone in the world can point to Stripe and say, they're the payments processing company.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's what I've been on. It's a journey I've been on. I mean, we started doing content marketing.
Yeah.
And then people say, well, can you do this? Yeah. Oh, yes, we can do that. Okay. And we do this. Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you do this?
Yep.
And then sooner, before you know it, you're everything to everybody. And then you're nothing to nobody.
Yeah.
And we had to take a step back and say, all right, this is exactly what we want to do, what we believe in. And this is the only thing we're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the B2B founder, they're invisible, let's say. Great at what they do, zero public presence. What is their actual first move? Because you've also, as a founder yourself, B2B founder, you've done a great job building publicly and building that public persona. So I would say you have a very small authority gap, if anything, right?
Yeah.
What's your advice to them?
Yeah. I mean, it's really funny. I've said this in the past. In some ways, we're just talking about you have a product or a service, and then you have to tell the world that this product or service exists, right? And you could loosely think of that as distribution. And for me, I have always had some level of content creation in my background. And I've always try to leverage the organic algorithms as much as possible, partially because I never had money to go buy paid ads or whatever it might be. It just was always too cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
So if you can crack an organic algorithm, it can unlock massive amount of essentially free distribution. So over the last 3 or 4 years, me and my co-founder, we've probably generated tens of millions of impressions across our posts.
Yeah.
We would have never been able to afford that if we were paying for those impressions, running ads on LinkedIn or Meta or whatever. So I tend to pull towards anytime there is an organic algorithm that will push the things for me. That's usually what I'll gravitate to. But that's also my skill set. I've been thinking about content creation for a really long time, and I've done a lot. So not every founder in the world that will make sense. And sometimes your product, again, if you're selling a product that is going to be $10 million to adopt or $1 million to adopt, and you need to sell it to Fortune 500 CEOs, I don't know that posting on LinkedIn is going to help you. You might need to go join some country clubs and pretend that you bought a private jet and trick people that you're rich or something. I don't know what that go-to-market looks like, but it's probably not the same thing as you would say to grow a business like ours. Same thing if you're selling like an iPhone game that's $1 going on LinkedIn, you're not going to matter.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit dependent on what the business is that you're trying to build. But I tend to think if you are able to go deep on one of these algorithms and be able to grow an audience on them, I think it is so underrated. And the moment you have an audience, everything becomes easier, regardless of it's this business or a future business that you launch. Mm-hmm. As long as you have a group of people that respect you and trust you, you could do a lot of really cool things. The founders of Basecamp, Jason Fried and
they're
DHH,
awesome.
They're great. They have giant audiences, both
very public. Yeah.
Very public. And
always been.
They've been leveraging that to launch all these cool businesses over the years, all these great products, all these amazing things, because they have people who look up to them and trust them. So, you know,
and Jason specifically, I think he did that. I've read a lot of his stuff over the years, many years, and he's always had a very unique perspective of how, for example, he was remote first forever.
Yeah.
And he said that, and that was his stake in the ground for a long time. I wasn't necessarily, that's how I learned about them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's super cool. And this was like 15 years ago. So I guess my point there is it's not always necessarily about the business itself.
Totally.
It's like other things that you care about that are applicable to how you run the business.
Yeah, potentially, for sure. And there's like these two principles. This lady named Wes Ko, she is very sharp. I heard this on a podcast with her one time, and they were like kind of the core guiding principles for when we were making our content was that we would try to do is she calls it the super specific how and a spiky opinion. So the spiky opinion, to start the simpler one, is like the controversial, something that's like sticks out, like you should be remote first is a perfect example, right? Have some sort of semi-contrarian take. You want to be targeting something that seemed like a best practice, but it's actually dumb. So like for us, you should tell what the product is, because everyone says, sell the benefit, not the feature. Nobody cares about the feature. And we're like, that's actually not true in software. The software, you kind of need to know what it is before you're going to be interested in it's going to boost your revenue. So contrarian opinions are a big, important mechanism to get people to think about you and be like, oh, that's interesting. And that goes against what I've heard.
I almost think you have to have a contrarian opinion.
At some level, or else, you know, what's the interest of following someone if they're just going to say all the stuff that's, you could have AI do that, right? AI is going to do all the
vanilla.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the super specific how is creating content that shows exactly how to do something, whether that's using your framework as a consultant or a marketing person, or if it's a product, like how to solve a specific problem with the product. And both of those things combined have driven our whole audience strategy since the beginning. Just pivoting back and forth between posts that how to write a hero of your homepage, right? How
Yeah.
to decide between different positioning options, how to think about market segmentation, all these how-tos, and then all these contrarian, spiky opinions of saying you actually should talk about the features. Simon Sinek, start with why. We say that's dumb. Start with what? If we're a software company, I have to know what this thing is, or I don't care about the why. All very spiky, but those two principles have been very important for us.
I love that. And that's super, I mean, people can use that right away today. Just go post that.
Yeah.
And it's so true. You need to stand out, and there's so much happening in the world. And I think that's what I said. Like, you have to have that contrarian opinion.
Yeah.
You have to stand out and say, hey, let's zig when everyone's zagging. Same thing. And so, okay, we're up only an hour. I want to be respectful of your time. This has been awesome. So we're going to jump into the rapid fire segment. You can pass just quick answers. Are you ready?
Okay.
Let's do it. Okay. Twitter 2009 or LinkedIn 2026? Which one do you like
Twitter.
better? Twitter. All right. One tool or habit you couldn't operate without right now?
I've been using Lovable a bunch. We build a lot
Really?
of custom apps for our business, and I'm
Yeah.
addicted.
Internal apps or
A little
external?
of both. Some internal and some customer facing.
Very cool. That's awesome. Okay. I'll have to ask you about that later. Okay. One win that didn't look like a win when it happened.
Oh man. That's a
Hard one.
really good question and kind of a hard question. A win. I mean, I think it's probably any time that we call it pre-firing a client.
Okay.
A client will pay us or be about to pay us, and then we will sense that this is not going to be a good fit, and then we pre-fire and we say we're going to refund you, and then it almost always ends up being like it was worth it because based on their response, they'll show their true colors in many ways. So it's almost always better.
Interesting.
Anytime we haven't done that and we don't go with our gut and we do the project anyways, it's always horrible. So it always feels like a non-win in the moment of, oh, we just lost this deal. But then in the retrospect, it's always a win.
Huh. That's really interesting. What's the best book you've gifted the most?
Built to Sell, John Warlow. It's all
Okay.
about productizing your service.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, so we recommend it to everyone.
Okay. Very cool. And then last question, it's one I ask everybody. You've built an entire business on the idea that clarity is the competitive edge, right? Big advantage. And that the companies who can articulate exactly who they are, who they serve, and why they're different will always win. With all of that context, what does reputation mean to you today?
I mean, I think the reputation is being known for those specific things that people can associate. Oh,
Yeah.
this is the person who does those things, stands for those things, and is respected in that way for the things that they've chosen to be known for. So I think the reputation in this, I think they go hand in hand. Like we're essentially, when we're telling people to make these positioning bets, these long-term positioning bets, we're saying you want to be known for, AKA have a reputation for this specific area. Like if you're Stripe, you want to be known for payments processing. You want to have the reputation that you're the number one payments processor in the world. Like you want to win that market and be associated with the gold standard of whatever the thing is that you're doing. But that's only going to happen if you've chosen something to win, right?
Got it. That's it, man. The perfect place to end. Hey, Anthony, thank you so much. It's been awesome.
For sure.
Great
Thanks
talk.
for having me. Super fun.
Yeah, that's Anthony Pierri. And here's what I think is the biggest takeaway from today's show. The homepage isn't the point. The homepage is just the test. If the whole company can't agree on one or two sentences describing who you are, who you serve, and why you're different, it's a strategy problem. It's a brand problem. And it's costing you clients, deals, and credibility every single day. The homepage just makes the problem visible. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Return on Reputation, share this with another founder or friend who needs to hear it, and I'll see you next week.